The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the familiar sound of superior beings discussing inferior species. Ambassador Vex of the Dominion straightened his crimson scales as he addressed the assembly, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, of conquest. The humans persist in their delusion of relevance, Vex announced, his three eyes gleaming with amusement. They actually believe their primitive vessels could challenge our fleet. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The assembled representatives of 12 advanced civilizations found human audacity endlessly entertaining. Captain Blake, Earth's sole representative, sat quietly in the observers section, his weathered hands folded on the table before him. Admiral Korth of the Hegemony leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the holographic display. Show them our latest battleship specifications, Vex. Perhaps visual evidence will cure their blindness. The chamber's central projector activated, revealing a sleek vessel stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length. Its hull gleamed with advanced metallurgy, bristling with energy weapons that could crack planets. The assembled aliens murmured appreciatively at their technological marvel. The Devastator class represents the pinnacle of military engineering, Vex proclaimed. Quantum shields, matter disintegrators, and fusion cores capable of powering entire star systems. 100 of these vessels patrol our territories. Commander Thale of the Federation nodded approvingly. Our fleet numbers similar vessels. The humans should consider themselves fortunate we permit their continued existence. Captain Blake cleared his throat softly. May I speak? The chamber fell silent, more from surprise than respect. Rarely did the human observer request permission to address the council. Vex waved a dismissive claw. Certainly. Enlighten us with human wisdom. Blake stood slowly, his simple uniform contrasting sharply with the ornate garments surrounding him. Impressive ships. How many crew do they require? The Devastator carries a crew of 50,000. Vex replied proudly. Elite warriors trained, from birth for conquest. And construction time? Admiral Korth's mandibles clicked with irritation. 15 years per vessel, using the finest materials from conquered worlds. Blake nodded thoughtfully. We appreciate the demonstration. Perhaps you'd like to see one of ours? The aliens exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from amusement to pity. What could these primitives possibly show that would impress beings who had mastered the galaxy? By all means, Vex chuckled. Entertain us. Blake activated his personal communicator. Control, this is Blake. Send the package. The chamber's sensors immediately began registering anomalous readings. Space itself seemed to ripple outside the station's viewports. Then, without warning, something massive dropped out of hyperspace directly beside the diplomatic station. The assembled aliens pressed against the viewports, their laughter dying in their throats. Where they expected to see some crude human vessel, they found themselves staring at something that defied comprehension. The ship stretched nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light itself. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes decorated its surface, only brutal functionality. Weapon ports dotted its frame like the eyes of some ancient predator, and energy readings that made their most advanced sensors scream warnings. Impossible, whispered Admiral Korth. No species builds vessels of that size. Blake returned to his seat calmly. The UES Retribution, one of our newer models. Newer models? Commander Thale's voice cracked slightly. How many crew does it carry? 12. The silence that followed was deafening. Vex's scales had paled to a sickly pink. 12? That's impossible. A vessel that size requires human automation exceeds your expectations. Blake interrupted gently. We've found large crews inefficient. The holographic displays around the chamber were updating frantically as the station's sensors attempted to catalog the human vessel. Energy signatures that peaked beyond their measurement capabilities. Armor plating of unknown composition. Weapon systems that registered as theoretical impossibilities. How long did construction take? Admiral Korth asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 6 months. We have shipyards on 12 worlds now, each producing 3 vessels monthly. The mathematical implications struck the assembled aliens simultaneously. Where they had hundreds of ships built over centuries, humans were producing dozens each month. Ambassador Vex found his voice first. "This must be your flagship, your greatest achievement." Blake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Actually, she's about middle tier. We reserve our best ships for threats we consider serious." Commander Thale's breathing apparatus wheezed as he processed this information. "How many of these vessels do you possess?" The exact number is classified, but public records show approximately 2,000 in active service. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted, denials, accusations of deception, demands for proof. Through it all, Captain Blake sat quietly, watching their reactions with mild interest. Vex slammed his claws against the podium, demanding silence. "Even if this is true, you lack the experience of warfare. We have conquered galaxies while your species was learning to make tools." "True," Blake acknowledged, "but we learned from excellent teachers. Your own historical records, freely available through your cultural exchange programs, provided detailed analyses of your military strategies, technological capabilities, and tactical preferences." The realization dawned slowly across alien faces. In their arrogance, they had shared everything: their strengths, their weaknesses, their methods of war, with the species they considered harmless. "You've been studying us," Admiral Korth stated, his massive frame suddenly seeming smaller. "For decades, we appreciate the education." Blake stood and walked toward the viewport, gazing out at the massive human vessel floating silently in space. "You assumed our primitive nature made us irrelevant. But humanity has one advantage you never considered." "What advantage?" Vex demanded. Blake turned back to face the assembled representatives, his expression suddenly hard as steel. "We've spent our entire history fighting each other. We know war in ways you cannot imagine." The chamber fell silent once more as the implications settled over the galaxy's former rulers. Outside, the UES Retribution waited patiently, its weapons powered down but ready. "Now then," Blake said, returning to his seat, "shall we discuss trade agreements on more equitable terms?"